Mr. Nathan, if the bad guys want to get to you, they'll have to go through me and my mom first. Those were the words of an 8-year-old girl, Emma Williams, spoken with eyes that didn't blink a trace of fear as she stood before a boardroom full of powerful people. That small black girl had nothing but heart, intelligence, and courage. And it was exactly those things that saved a man who had once lost all hope, and ultimately their whole family. This isn't just a story about love. It's about injustice, racial discrimination, and trust reclaimed through the unconditional love of a child. And you won't be able to look away until the very last moment. The cold rain whipped against the glass facade of Cross Industries like lashes, making the entire building tremble as if the sky itself was furious. Inside, the marble lobby shimmered under the lights, reflecting the tiny silhouette of a drenched, shivering black girl being escorted out by 2 security guards. "Please, please." Her voice broke beneath the sound of rain. She tried to wrench free from the guard's grip. He had eyed her with wariness from the start, as if her skin color alone was a form of accusation. "I need to see the owner of this building. My mom is dying." Emma Williams, an 8-year-old girl with dark brown skin and radiant eyes, stood alone in the cold, clinical space. People passing by glanced at her as though she were a stain on the pristine floor, an eyesore in a world of tailored suits and expensive heels. "Hey, kid, this isn't a place for children, especially not your kind," said an older guard, his voice half soft, half skeptical. "People like you don't just walk into this world." But Emma didn't flinch. Her eyes lit up when she saw the executive elevator doors open. In her mind echoed her mother's voice. "Never let your skin color keep you from walking into any room." "Please," she shouted, her voice echoing through the lobby. "My mom needs help. She's all I've got." Every eye turned to her, a drenched black girl, yelling in a space where her very presence was almost an offense. The elevator doors slid open, and Nathan Cross stepped out into a heavy silence. The powerful white man in a black suit looked like he had just stepped out of another world. He paused as his gaze met the trembling child on the floor. "What's all this noise?" Nathan asked coolly. His assistant glanced at Emma and shrugged. "Just a kid, the kind the system usually overlooks." But Nathan saw, not just a kid, but a gaze raw and unshielded, as if she were tearing through all the defenses he'd spent years building. "Are you the boss here?" she whispered, her voice so faint it nearly dissolved into the air. Her courage outweighed even her desperation. She took a breath and dropped to her knees on the cold marble floor. No one stopped her. She looked Nathan straight in the eyes as if pleading with the world not to turn away just because her skin wasn't the right color. "Please, marry my mom." The words landed like a punch to the chest. She cried, not out of fear, but because she was desperate enough to wish for something impossible. "My mom used to sing, used to dance with me in the kitchen. Now she just cries and apologizes for giving birth to a child this world will never accept." The assistant stepped forward, muttering, "Sir, perhaps we should call social services. A more suitable environment for people in their condition." His words were razor sharp, and Emma understood the meaning behind condition all too well. "No, please don't take me away. My mom isn't bad. She's just tired. Just because we don't look like them, we're a burden? I see you every day, fancy car, fancy clothes, but you look sad, like my mom. Maybe if 2 sad people are together, it'll hurt less. And I'll still have my mom. I know you're rich, the kind of person doors open for without even asking. And I know, if you wanted, you could save my mom." Her eyes showed no bitterness, only an almost irrational trust in someone she barely knew. "You've been following me?" Nathan asked, voice cold, a reflex of someone used to being approached for personal gain. Emma nodded, tugging the frayed sleeve of her old coat to wipe her nose, an act that made a few receptionists wrinkle their noses and whisper, "Doesn't belong here." "I walk by your building every day. I see your car. People hold doors for you. Everyone smiles, but you don't. You're sad, just like my mom. Maybe if they're sad together, they won't feel alone." Nathan froze. She didn't just see him, she saw through him, through the icy shell of a billionaire that society worshipped but never truly knew. "Where's your mom?" he asked, his voice raspier than usual. "She's at Murphy's Diner on 5th Street, wearing a dirty apron, working as a waitress. She doesn't know I came here. She'll be mad if she finds out I bothered a rich white man. But I had to try. My mom is all I have left. My dad, they don't even say his name, just call him that missing black guy. I can't lose my mom too." Nathan's assistant was now waving his phone, urging him with wild gestures, as if every second spent here meant financial damage. But Nathan could no longer hear him. Nathan knelt, his knees hitting the cold stone. His expensive suit wrinkled, but for the first time, he didn't care about appearances. His eyes met Emma's. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softened. "Emma. Emma Williams." Her voice was a whisper sent into a world that had rejected her too many times. "My mom's name is Lydia. Lydia Williams. She's 28, the most beautiful woman in the world, even when she's scrubbing burnt pans or collapsing from exhaustion." Nathan looked into the dark, clear eyes of this little black girl and saw something he had long forgotten. Unconditional love. No contracts, no profit, just a child kneeling for her mother. "Emma," he said carefully, "marriage isn't something you just ask for and get. But you're rich," Emma replied as if that fact were magic. "Rich people can do anything, right? Build houses, break laws, change people's lives. You can make my mom smile again, can't you?" Nathan stood almost off balance. In his head, voices clashed. Lawyers, shareholders, the press. But Emma's voice drowned them all. "Say it again, Emma. Where's your mom?" he asked, not out of obligation this time, but out of genuine care. Meanwhile, Lydia Williams, a black woman with sunken eyes and a weary posture, was weaving her way through the morning crowd at Murphy's Diner. Her hands were cracked and rough, marked by 3 consecutive shifts, scrubbing floors to picking up every nameless scrap of trash. But she kept her back straight, because she knew there was a little girl who needed her to stay alive. At 28, Lydia Williams should have been enjoying her youth. Instead, she was worn down, exhausted by the endless days of fighting alone after her husband's death. A car accident had taken James away, and with him, every hope of a stable future. What Lydia was left with were mountains of debt, medical bills, and the pitiful stares of a society that saw a widowed black woman as helpless and lost. "Hurry up, Lydia. You're slowing us down and losing customers," Murphy barked, shoving 2 plates across the counter as if she were a slave, not a worker. Lydia clenched her teeth, suppressing the pain and the sting of the calluses in her palms. She lifted the plates as if she were lifting an entire day's worth of humiliation, forcing herself to stretch a hollow smile. At table 6 sat a white businessman in an expensive suit. His eyes scanned Lydia's face like he was evaluating a discount item, with a mix of pity and disdain. "Here's your order, sir." Lydia placed the plate gently on the table, keeping her voice even. She was used to being polite to people who treated her as lesser. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. What they wanted was to watch her stand there, a background to their privileged meal. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he smirked. "Sweetheart, you look like you're about to collapse. Or did you have too much fun last night?" His voice dangled suggestively, his eyes sliding over her chest like she was nothing more than cheap entertainment. Lydia offered a faint smile, the kind of smile black women are forced to master when living in a society that doesn't permit them to be tired. She was so exhausted her legs felt numb, her heart so empty she couldn't even find her tears anymore. But she knew. Here, weakness was a luxury she couldn't afford. "I'm fine, thank you, sir." She nodded, turning away, keeping her eyes dry. In this place, tears earned mockery, not concern. But Lydia hadn't been fine. Not since the night she held her 8-year-old daughter's hand and told her they'd have to sleep in the car for a while. Not since she had to choose between paying rent or buying painkillers after her 3rd shift. Not since her black skin meant employers picked her to mop floors instead of working the register. The worst part was seeing Emma, a child who should have been carefree, learn how to carry the world like a grown-up. Emma had stopped laughing, stopped dreaming, and started speaking like a miniature mother, always afraid her real mom might fall apart. Last night, Lydia had walked into the kitchen and gone still at the sight of Emma, her tiny black girl struggling to slice bread with a dull knife, trying to make a sandwich. "You forgot to eat again," Emma whispered, her voice raspy. "I was scared you'd go hungry. So I made this for you to take tomorrow morning. I know you don't have money for dinner shifts." Her little hands trembled from the cold, but her eyes stayed strong. That night, Lydia cried until there were no tears left, burying her face into a worn pillow to keep her sobs from waking Emma, the brown-skinned girl who always tried to act stronger than her 8 years. "Lydia!" Murphy's shrill voice cut through the diner. "Someone's asking for you." Which is strange, really. Didn't think anyone remembered a colored waitress in crowded old New York? Lydia looked up, confused. In this place, people called out orders, not names, especially not for someone like her. Black, poor, and invisible. But this time was different. At the far end of the room, where the lighting was weakest, sat Emma, her hair neatly braided, still in her school uniform, curled up, eyes locked on her mother. Lydia's heart dropped. "Emma, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at school." Her voice was a mix of anger, worry, and disbelief. Emma bowed her head. I had to see you." Her voice was so small only those who had heard midnight cries could recognize its weight. Lydia rushed past customers, sliding into the seat across from her. Her heart raced. Emma, her rule-following child, had skipped school to come here. Something was definitely wrong. Emma had always been a model student, and in a school full of white children, she had to try even harder not to draw attention. She had never missed a single class because Emma knew that just one slip would earn her the label lazy black kid in an instant. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you feeling sick?" Lydia asked, her hands still greasy from the kitchen, wiping them hastily on her apron. Emma shook her head. "No, I just missed you. I just wanted to see you." That sentence made Lydia's heart crack into pieces. It was true. Lydia had been working too much. For food, for rent, for the cold stares of a society that frowned upon a single black mother trying to survive. But in return, she was losing what mattered most: time with her daughter. Every day, Lydia left the house before sunrise and returned after the streets had gone dark. Emma was growing up in silence, not because she wanted to, but because her mother no longer had time to hear stories about school or friends. Their conversations had been reduced to brief notes left on the fridge or fleeting kisses in the middle of the night. Everything was too short, too late. "I miss you too, my little angel," Lydia whispered, her calloused hands gently wrapping around the tiny fingers of her daughter, the hand of a child who hadn't been allowed to live like a child. "But I have to work. You understand that, right? I'm doing all of this for us, for your future." Lydia spoke as if trying to convince herself more than her daughter. Emma nodded, though her eyes brimmed with tears. "I know. I just wish you didn't have to be so sad all the time. I just want to see you smile." Lydia wished too. She wished James were still alive. She wished she didn't have to endure the degrading stares of people who called her a failed black woman. And she wished Emma could have a real childhood, not one built from overdue bills and scarcity. "Emma, you have to go back to school right now," Lydia said gently but firmly. "If your teacher finds out, they'll call social services." "But you're working. Let me go back by myself," Emma pleaded, panic rising in her voice. "No!" Lydia stood up abruptly. "I'll take you myself. Work can wait. But you can't. My daughter, she matters more than any paycheck," Lydia said for the first time in months with complete conviction. Lydia bit her lip as she said it, knowing full well it would cost her wages. In this place, a woman of color wasn't allowed to have family matters. One moment of softness could mean losing everything. On the way back to school, Lydia noticed Emma kept glancing over her shoulder, her small frame tightening as if something unseen was following her. "Emma, what's wrong? Why do you keep looking behind like someone's chasing you?" Lydia asked, concern tightening in her throat. Emma bit her lip, a habit from the days right after her father's death, then shook her head. "It's nothing, Mom. I'm okay." "I just worry about you," Lydia whispered. I love you, Emma, more than anything, and I will protect you, even if the whole world turns its back on me. After returning Emma to school, Lydia dragged her feet back toward the diner. Each step weighed with the fear of public humiliation, something Murphy, the only white person at the diner, often dished out to anyone who missed their shift. Rent was piling up, utility bills unpaid. Lydia couldn't afford to lose her job. For someone like her, opportunities didn't knock twice, especially when people saw skin color before competence. When she pushed open the diner's worn-out door, Lydia was surprised Murphy wasn't yelling as usual. He stood there, his expression half wary, half confused. "Lydia," Murphy nodded stiffly, "there's a man here waiting for you. Something about your daughter." He put strange emphasis on the words, "your daughter," as if Emma were some kind of social problem, not a little girl. The words froze Lydia's blood. What happened to Emma? Did someone hurt her? Was it someone at school? Or? Lydia turned toward the corner Murphy had gestured to, her heart thudding like a drum. Sitting there was a tall man in a tailored, expensive suit, the kind only white billionaires wore. His eyes were cold, like he could read thoughts with a single glance. That gaze made Lydia feel smaller than she'd ever felt before. "Mrs. Williams," the man spoke in a deep voice, rising like a king granting an audience. "I'm Nathan Cross. I believe we need to talk." His name echoed like the whole city should stop to listen. Lydia's knees nearly buckled. The name Nathan Cross was far from unfamiliar. The real estate mogul, the white billionaire who graced the covers of magazines people like Lydia only saw while wiping tables. This man owned nearly half the city's downtown, the part of the city Lydia and Emma could only look at from across the train tracks, from where the poor and people of color were pushed out of the view of wealth. I don't understand," Lydia stammered. "What does this have to do with Emma? What did she do?" Nathan sat down again, his face nearly emotionless. "Your daughter came to my office this morning, a tiny brown-skinned girl. Brave, I must say, quite impressive." Everything in Lydia's world spun. Emma, the glances over her shoulder, the panic, and now a billionaire talking about being impressed? What had her daughter done? What could possibly make the most powerful man in the city come all the way here? "My daughter, what did she do?" Lydia asked, her voice cracking. In her heart, she feared one mistake from Emma could label her forever, because in America, a black child is never allowed to make mistakes. Nathan was silent, chillingly so, his cold eyes scanning Lydia's face like a storm. Then he said something that nearly made her knees give out. "Your daughter proposed to me. That 8-year-old girl, your daughter, proposed to me right in my office this morning." The cheap plastic coffee cup trembled in Lydia's hand. A stream of hot liquid spilled over, burning her fingertips. But she didn't feel the pain. The shock had consumed every sense. Lydia's mind was spinning. How could a little brown-skinned 8-year-old walk into the office of a white billionaire and do that? What did she say?" Lydia asked, her voice cracking, almost begging not to hear the answer. Nathan sat in the corner of the shabby diner, looking as though he had accidentally stepped out of Manhattan into a forgotten neighborhood of color. His suit shimmered under the flickering lights, a stark contrast against the peeling walls. He looked like a walking advertisement for New York's elite, seated among people who were fighting over the price of bread every day. "Your daughter might be the most reasonable person I've spoken to in years," Nathan said evenly, emotionless. "She told me everything. About the bills, about the cracked ceiling in your apartment, about the crying at night you thought she didn't hear." Lydia's face flushed with shame. Nothing was more humiliating than having a rich, powerful white man know the intimate details of your poverty. And for all of it to come from your own little girl. I'm sorry," Lydia whispered, her calloused hands trembling in front of her. "She's just a little brown-skinned child, naive. She doesn't understand that in this world, brown skin isn't allowed in offices like yours. I'll talk to her. I'll make sure she never bothers you again." "She didn't bother me," Nathan interrupted. "In fact, she's worth more than half the people sitting around my boardroom table." At least she's not trying to sell her soul to keep her seat. Lydia looked up, unable to hide her shock. What are you talking about? Nathan leaned back, raising an eyebrow. Do you remember the last time someone begged for help? Just because they truly cared about you, not because they wanted something in return? I'm not sure I understand, Lydia murmured. Your daughter didn't ask me for money. She didn't ask for a job for you. She asked me to marry you because she thinks if I were your husband, you would smile again. Lydia's eyes blurred. She's just a little black girl living in a world that never makes room for her, Nathan went on. And she loves her mother so much that she walked into a building where people would call security just for seeing her in the lobby. She said, "My mom cries every night when she thinks I'm asleep." That line ripped through the mask Lydia had worked so hard to hold. She thought she'd hidden it well, but Emma, tiny, dark-skinned, and quiet, had seen it all. I never wanted her to see me like this, Lydia choked out. I just wanted her to be a kid, not to worry about the electricity bill or the loan collector. But she does, Nathan said, meeting her eyes. She worries enough to overcome fear and prejudice, just to beg a rich white stranger to do something, anything, to save her mom. Lydia wiped a tear with her worn sleeve. She inhaled deeply, forcing herself to regain the calm. A kind of composure every woman of color needs when standing before a powerful white man. Mr. Cross, I appreciate you coming here, she said, trying to steady her voice. But I don't know what you expect from me. I don't have control over this life. I can't manage every minute of her day. I'm working 3 jobs just to keep us from starving. Her voice hardened, but her eyes still held fear. Nathan didn't reply. He tapped lightly on the cheap laminated table with perfectly trimmed nails, a slow, steady rhythm, like a clock. Tell me about your husband, he said suddenly, his voice low. Lydia froze. That question hit like a punch to the chest. Why? Because Emma mentioned him, Nathan replied. She said, my mom used to smile every day before my dad died. Lydia's throat tightened. Every time James was mentioned, it was like reopening a grave her heart had barely managed to cover. James was my whole world, Lydia said softly, as though even the wind might break the memory. He was funny, kind. With him, I felt enough, like my skin wasn't a burden. When he died, the world became a cold place I didn't recognize anymore. How long has it been? 8 months, she exhaled. On his way home, a drunk white man ran a red light. James died on the spot. No last words. Nathan's face softened, his eyes blinking slowly, as though something had finally reached him for the first time that day. I'm sorry, he said, gentler than he had ever sounded before. The insurance didn't even cover the casket, Lydia continued, as if the locked door of her pain had just burst open. The ambulance, the hospital, still sent bills as if he were alive to pay them. Every piece of paper felt like another stab. I sold the house, the car, even my wedding coat, and it still wasn't enough. It's never enough. Debt is like a shadow. The more you run, the bigger it gets. Now I work 3 jobs. 3. Just so my daughter doesn't have to sleep in the car. Lydia lowered her head, feeling like a part of her wanted to disappear from the room entirely. I know how people look at me, a failed black mother who couldn't keep her family together. But they don't know how hard I've tried. I'm drowning and Emma sees it all. She shouldn't have to see her mother like this. She thinks she can save me, but she's only 8, and some cracks. Even time can't mend. Nathan sat in silence for a long time. The sharpness in his eyes had softened into reflection. Finally, he spoke. I want to offer you a job. Lydia blinked rapidly, thinking she'd misheard. You just said, a job? At my company, a salary enough to clear your debts and live, not just survive. I don't have an Ivy League degree, she said quickly. No special skills beyond mopping floors and enduring racist comments from customers. You're someone who's been pushed to the bottom and still stands. A mother who walks in worn shoes so her daughter can go to school. Where I come from, that's called strength. That's a qualification. Lydia looked at him, torn between hope and skepticism. Why? "You don't know anything about me. I'm just a fading brown mother. Because your daughter told me, if you're really a good person, you'll help my mom." And I realized she was right. "And because," Nathan added, his voice hoarser now, "I've never seen a little black girl so brave in a world that's always trying to silence her." "I don't take charity," Lydia said firmly, the pride born from years of being dismissed for her skin and class flaring like fire in her eyes. "I've been pitied my whole life, Mr. Cross. I don't need another white man feeling sorry for me." Nathan's eyes flashed, something between anger and challenge. "I'm not offering this job to save anyone," he said, his voice hard as steel. "This isn't charity. I'm offering a job because I believe you'd be excellent at it. If you say no just because your pride is wounded, that's your choice. But don't call that integrity. But think of your daughter. She did something no one else dared. Begged a stranger to bring her mother back to life." His words cut deep, like a sharp blade pressing against Lydia's softest truth. She pictured Emma's tiny frame, fumbling in the kitchen at midnight, her hands trembling as she spread butter on stale bread, trying to hide her sighs. Lydia swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "What job?" "Personal assistant," Nathan said. "Scheduling, handling correspondence, coordinating meetings, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. No nights, no weekends, no sacrificing your child just to get by." Lydia's heart pounded in her chest. A real job, real hours, real evenings with her daughter. "But I've never worked in an office," she murmured, anxious. Nathan gave a faint smile. "But you've managed the chaos of 3 jobs and a child in a system that ignores people like you. Trust me, managing my calendar is easier." Lydia narrowed her eyes. "So, what's the catch?" Nathan hesitated, a rare pause. And for the first time, Lydia saw something wounded flash behind those sharp eyes. "I'm not a pleasant person," he admitted. "I don't do small talk. I don't forgive stupid mistakes. I have no patience for weakness." "Then why me? A black woman, no degree, no reputation?" Lydia asked, her voice shaking, but her eyes steady. Nathan looked her directly in the eyes, no longer guarded. In that moment, he wasn't a billionaire. He was a man who had forgotten how to trust. "Your daughter," he said, "reminded me that sometimes the people no one helps are the ones most deserving of help." Lydia swallowed the lump in her throat. Emotions surged like a tide. "I'll think about it," she said softly, her hands clasped in her lap. Nathan nodded and stood. "You don't have to decide now, but if you're still thinking about it, come to my office, 9 a.m. tomorrow." He looked at her one more time and turned to leave the diner. Nathan pulled out a business card, thick as a gold credit card, and slid it across the table like he was signing a pardon. "And Mrs. William," he said, "bring Emma. A little black girl brave enough to dream big deserves to see that dream come true." As Nathan's figure faded away, Lydia stared at the card like it might vanish if she blinked. The gold-embossed letters glinted. Nathan Cross, CEO, Cross Industries. A prestigious downtown address, the kind of place women like her only passed by, never entered. She thought of Emma's young brown eyes, eyes that had seen too much, wanted too much, and trusted a stranger more than the world had ever allowed her to. Maybe, finally a door was opening for someone who'd been shut out their whole life. Maybe, whispered prayers at night didn't disappear into the void. But as the luxury car slid silently down the narrow street, Lydia felt her heart tighten with a familiar question known to the poor when confronted with kindness from the rich. Why would someone like Nathan Cross care about a black widow surviving on tips and a decaying dream? The steel and glass elevator reflected the glint of chandelier lights as it carried Lydia and her daughter up to the 50th floor, as if they were rising off the ground and soaring straight into the realm of those who never had to count rent. Emma stood beside her, wearing a simple blue dress, the only one Lydia could afford for school photo day, now looking terribly out of place among marble floors and stainless steel. Emma's wide eyes sparkled with awe as she looked down at the now toy-sized city below. "I never thought black people could go this high," she whispered. "Mom, is this real?" Emma's voice trembled as if afraid it might all vanish like a dream. Lydia squeezed her daughter's hand, holding back tears. "We're going to make it real, because you deserve it, baby." The sliding doors opened with a whisper, like a breath. The room before them didn't feel like an office. It felt like a world Black people had never been allowed to enter without a guest pass. The entire city sprawled below through the towering glass walls. The distant buildings weren't unreachable anymore. They were above them now. Every piece of furniture, Italian leather chairs, flawless glass tables, screamed luxury. It was a space Lydia had never dared to dream of touching. A blonde, flawless white receptionist gave Lydia and Emma a glance, like she was sizing up customers at a diamond boutique. "Mrs. Williams," she said, lips barely moving. "Mr. Cross is expecting you. This way." Lydia's palms were damp with sweat, as though she were stepping into an interrogation room, not a job interview. The night before, she hadn't slept. She thought about the traps Black women often fell into, dreamlike promises that ended in tears. What if this was just another cruel joke? Another way powerful men get what they want from vulnerable women? But then she remembered Emma's glowing face when she heard about the job. That fragile hope, something Lydia couldn't bring herself to crush. "Right here," the receptionist said, opening a massive door that felt like the entrance to another world. The room was as big as a tennis court, gleaming and spotless. Not a single stain like in their leaky apartment. One wall was lined with medals and Ivy League certificates, another with photos of Nathan shaking hands with people Lydia had only ever seen on TV. Senators, TV hosts, infamous CEOs. But what caught Lydia's eye wasn't the lavish office. It was the man standing with his back to her, silently looking down at the world she and Emma had never belonged to. Standing before the glass wall, Nathan Cross no longer looked like a cold CEO, but a man alone, lost in a world of power he'd built himself. When he turned around, Lydia caught a glimpse of something hollow in those pale gray eyes, a kind of loneliness no amount of money could fill. "Mrs. Williams," he spoke, his voice still bearing that cool refinement, but now laced with a hint of respect instead of command. "Emma," he nodded gently. The girl stepped forward, chin held high, a confidence not easily gained when you grow up in a neighborhood where cops pull you over just for being Black. "Thank you for not looking down on my mom just because we don't wear suits or live in the White District," Emma said, her voice calm and polite, yet heavy with meaning. Nathan's smile softened slightly. "I haven't helped anyone yet. Everything depends on whether your mother is willing to step into a world that usually stays shut to people like her." "She will," Emma said firmly. "My mom is stronger than anyone I know, even the ones with MBAs and Teslas. She knows how to fight with nothing in her hands." "Who else in this office can say that?" Lydia flushed. "Emma, sweetie, let me speak to Mr. Cross alone." "Actually, I'd like Emma to stay," Nathan cut in, "because if it weren't for her, I'd still be the man who ignores every cry for help coming from the wrong zip code." He gestured toward a luxurious leather seating area, like something from the TV dramas Lydia only saw on borrowed screens from neighbors. As the three of them sat, Lydia noticed Nathan looked a little tense. He had probably hosted senators and CEOs, but he wasn't used to facing a Black mother in a worn dress and her razor-sharp daughter. "I'll be direct," Nathan began, his voice shifting into work mode. Firm, fast, and unforgiving. "You'll be my personal assistant, which means handling the chaos of my schedule, answering emails, taking calls, coordinating travel, and keeping me sane. You'll attend every meeting I can't escape on my own." Lydia nodded, trying to remain composed as if she hadn't just heard about a job she never imagined would be offered to someone like her. "This job isn't easy. I'm not patient. I don't tolerate laziness. I never let mistakes slide. I expect more than what most people would call reasonable." Emma tilted her head. "Do you yell at employees often? Or just the ones who aren't white?" Nathan raised an eyebrow. "No, I'm not mean. I'm just intense." "My teacher says the same about me," Emma replied. "I get called rude when I'm just thinking deeply. But if my skin were lighter, I'd probably be called a quiet genius." Nathan let out a short, surprised laugh. Sometimes the truth from a little brown girl was sharper than any lawyer's defense. "You're right," he said, looking at Emma differently now. "People often confuse focus with coldness. especially when you're not white. So you're not mean, Emma said, as if solving a puzzle in her heart. You're just lonely. Her words landed like a grenade in the room. Lydia held her breath, heart pounding. She waited for Nathan to snap. Powerful white men don't like being seen through. But Nathan didn't react. He stared at Emma for a long time, as if her words had pierced straight through his invisible armor. "Why do you think I'm lonely?" he asked, voice lowering. "Because sometimes my mom has that same look," Emma replied. "Like there's a big hole in her heart that nothing can fill. No matter how hard she tries, life still keeps rejecting her, just because of her skin color." Nathan's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. He couldn't. Not after something so painfully true had just been said. He turned to Lydia. $60,000 a year includes insurance, retirement, and the chance to live like the people this world has always shut out. His tone was firm. "You start this week." Lydia was stunned. She had never seen that number in her account. Not even after a full year working 3 jobs, doing manual labor, swallowing humiliation from being looked down on. A single thought rang clearly in her mind. "I finally made it out." "This is fair compensation," Nathan added, as if reading her thoughts. "Not pity, not charity. You deserve this." "But why me?" Lydia asked, her voice hoarse. "You could hire anyone with a fancy degree, with office experience. Someone not like me." "I don't need someone who interned at Morgan Stanley," Nathan said, never breaking eye contact. "I need someone who knows what it really means to fight. Someone who understands the price of protecting family, even when the world sees them with suspicion." Emma clapped her hands together like everything had just clicked. "That's my mom. She's the one who kept me safe from those gross looks at the bus stop, and from neighbors who said she probably doesn't have a dad." Nathan's face turned solemn. "I believe she's done better than I ever imagined." "Mr. Cross," Lydia said, voice low and slow, "I need to ask you something, and I want the truth." "Go ahead," Nathan nodded. "What do you really want from me?" Lydia looked him dead in the eye. "Because men like you don't offer chances like this to poor brown mothers without expecting something back." Nathan's eyes flared. "What kind of man do you think I am? I think you're the kind of man who's used to getting what he wants?" Lydia didn't flinch. "And I need to know if you're using your power to take something in return. I might be poor, I might be tired, but I will not sell my daughter's safety or my dignity, no matter how hungry we get." Nathan suddenly stood, walking toward the window. Lydia swallowed hard. "I've gone too far." "You're right," Nathan finally admitted. "I'm used to getting everything with money. But what I want from you is something money can't touch. And I've never known how to be worthy of it," Lydia whispered. "What is it?" Nathan turned back, and for the first time he showed his real face. Not the CEO, not the armor, just a man stripped bare by the question. "I just want to know what it feels like to do the right thing," he said, almost whispering. "I'm helping you and Emma not to get anything back, but because I want to believe that even someone like me can become the kind of man your daughter believes exists." Emma stood abruptly from her chair and walked up to Nathan. Without hesitation, the little brown-skinned girl reached out and held the large, pale hand of the man before her. "You are a good man," Emma said firmly. "You just forgot that because you've lived around people who always said folks like me and my mom aren't worth helping. My dad used to say, good people sometimes get buried under other people's pain and silence. But that doesn't mean they stop being good. They just need to be reminded." Nathan looked down at her hand, so small against his. And for a moment, Lydia saw the polished, cold exterior of the white, powerful man begin to crack, for the first time. "Your dad must have been a deep thinker," Nathan said quietly, his tone different from the one he used barking orders at staff of color in hallways. "Yes, sir, and he would have liked you," Emma smiled. "He'd say, that guy's got sad eyes. Hurt people act scary so no one gets close." Nathan actually laughed, truly laughed, not the polite smirk he gave shareholders or reporters, but a soft laugh of relief, maybe even gratitude. He turned back to Lydia. "So, do you want this job, even if it means people might say I've lost my mind for hiring a single brown mom as my personal assistant?" Lydia looked at Emma, still holding Nathan's hand, eyes full of the kind of unconditional trust Lydia had never seen from any adult. She thought of the sleepless nights, the sound of a growling stomach mixed with the old heater clanking, of how Emma had stopped asking, "Mom, can I go to summer camp?" Because she knew their life wasn't like the blonde kids with 2 cars and backyards. "I do," Lydia said, her voice steady for the first time in front of a rich white man. "I need it, and I'll make sure you never regret it." "Good," Nathan said, his smile fading back into CEO mode. "You start Monday. Linda, my current assistant, will train you. She won't like it, but I don't care." "Mr. Cross?" Emma tugged on his sleeve gently. "Can I ask something? But my mom's gonna yell at me." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." Emma looked him straight in the eyes. "Are you going to fall in love with my mom?" The room froze. Lydia wanted to disappear. Her face went red as fire. "Emma," Lydia hissed, voice low and urgent. "You don't ask things like that, especially not to a rich white man." But Nathan didn't laugh. He didn't scold. He simply looked at Emma, as if the little girl had just said aloud the one thing he'd never dared to admit to himself. "I don't know," he said, his voice softer than ever. "It's been a long time since I let myself even think about love." "You should try," Emma said firmly. "My mom's amazing. If you stop looking through assumptions, you might love her the way she always loved people who never gave her a chance." Nathan turned to look at Lydia, and in that moment, Lydia saw something. Not power, not judgment, but an invitation, honest, vulnerable. "Maybe I should try loving again," Nathan whispered, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had forgotten how to trust. 3 weeks later, after settling into the job, Lydia realized Nathan Cross wasn't just a rich white billionaire. He was a maze, a man who wrapped his heart in 6 layers: money, power, pain, loneliness, guilt, and a flicker of hope he didn't dare name. Nathan was the no-nonsense type. Everything had to be on time, in place, exact wording in emails. But strangely, he never made Lydia do anything he wouldn't do himself. No degrading errands, no passive-aggressive hints about her place. He didn't look at her through her skin, or if he did, he deliberately hid it. What made Lydia the most cautious was also what started to shake her. Nathan wasn't like the wealthy white men she'd served. He didn't talk with that nasal condescension. He didn't pretend to be polite and then tear up her resume behind her back. He was real, and sometimes that kind of real was scarier than fake. "Ms. Williams," Nathan looked up from his screen, his voice lacking its usual coldness. "Cancel the lunch with Patterson. Move it to next week. Something urgent came up." Lydia scanned the digital calendar, brows furrowed. "You know they've been waiting 6 months just to book a day, right?" "I know," Nathan said, faster than usual. "But Emma's school just called. She's in the nurse's office. Fever." Lydia's chest tightened like a vice. I need to go, please." "I already called the car." Nathan stood, grabbing his coat. "We're going now. I'll take you." "Mr. Cross, you don't have to." "Nathan," he interrupted, "and I do have to, because nothing is more important than your daughter. Not even $1 million contract." In the car, Lydia stole glances at Nathan through the rearview mirror. He was quiet, his eyes on the road, but his mind clearly elsewhere. A part of her had started to read him like a messy contract. Over the past weeks, she realized that every time Nathan furrowed his brow, it wasn't anger. It was fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of someone seeing that he wasn't always cold. He never raised his voice. Not even to the dark-skinned coffee runner that other executives didn't bother to look in the eye. Nathan didn't slam tables or humiliate people. He just handled things, like he was constantly fighting himself. He was always the last to leave the office. Not because of work, but like the penthouse he lived in was the place he feared returning to most. "Can I ask you something?" Lydia said as the car pulled into the school lot. "Go ahead." "Why aren't you married? I mean, you have everything. Success, stability, and you..." "Well..." She hesitated, face flushing. "I'm what?" Nathan teased, a hint of mischief. "Nothing," Lydia shook her head. "You were gonna say I'm handsome, weren't you?" He grinned. "I was going to say you're a good man," Lydia said honestly. "Any woman would feel safe with you." The smile faded. Not everyone stays, he replied, especially the ones you care about most. Before Lydia could ask more, the car stopped at the school gate. Emma sat on a small cot in the nurse's office, her face pale but lighting up as she saw her mom and Nathan enter. "Mom, Mr. Nathan," she called out weakly, eyes shimmering. "I have a fever." Nathan said nothing. He simply knelt gently by the bed, placing the back of his hand on her forehead, a gesture that choked Lydia up. Not everyone knelt down to her daughter's level like that, especially not a man like him. "You're burning up, little one," Nathan said softly, brushing Emma's hair. "Let's get you home, all right?" "I don't want to go home," Emma whispered, resting her head on his shoulder. "Our apartment's too cramped. The neighbors fight all night. I'm tired." Nathan looked at Lydia over Emma's disheveled hair. "How about coming to my place? Quiet guest room, and no one knocking on walls just because they don't like the skin tone of the people next door." Lydia froze. Going to a rich white man's house with her brown-skinned daughter? In this city, one look was enough for rumors to start that they were mooching off privilege. "Please, Mom," Emma whispered, eyes heavy with fatigue. "Just one night. Somewhere I can sleep without hearing people call us leeches." Lydia looked at her daughter, pale, curled up, worn out. How could she say no after everything Emma had endured just for the color of her skin? Nathan's home stunned Lydia. It wasn't the cold mansion she imagined, but a house with soul, with history, and with warmth. No gleaming marble floors, just old oak, thick wool rugs, and the scent of books. Everything whispered, "I live quietly, not to impress." The living room had a crackling fireplace. On the wall, black and white portraits of a black woman, perhaps his grandmother. Lydia felt her heart soften. "Didn't expect that," Lydia exhaled. In her mind, the old whispers rang. Successful white men only choose white women. That's the unspoken rule. "My grandmother's house," Nathan said, lifting Emma gently like she was a fragile antique. "I bought it back when the family had to sell. I couldn't let it fall into hands that didn't respect old things. My grandmother was the first brown-skinned woman who taught me about gentleness. This house preserves that. I couldn't let it become some showpiece for a hollow tycoon." The guest room for Emma had oak leaf wallpaper and a window overlooking the back garden where sparrows gathered. Lydia had never seen her daughter sleep so peacefully. Emma fell asleep before her head even touched the pillow, a kind of sleep she hadn't had through the entire past winter. She needed one night without waking up to whispers like, "Who's that brown kid on the second floor?" Nathan murmured, pulling the blanket over her. Lydia watched him. This was the first white man who didn't look at them with pity, but with genuine care. "Thank you," she said softly. "You don't owe us anything." "I owe Emma," Nathan said firmly, "because she reminded me that kindness doesn't care about color." They sat on an old leather couch, warm tea in hand. Sunlight filtered through the window, glowing on Lydia's brown skin, making her look like she had stepped out of an old painting. "I haven't forgotten what you said about people leaving you," Lydia spoke. "Have you been hurt?" Nathan stared into his tea as if the answer might settle at the bottom of the cup. After a moment, he said, "I was once engaged. Her name was Victoria. White, of course. She called me emotionally exhausting." "What happened?" Lydia asked, knowing the answer wouldn't be simple. "She said I didn't know how to love." Nathan let out a faint, bitter smile. "Or I only loved myself. Said I didn't know how to hold someone who was hurting. Couldn't say I need you without feeling weak." His voice was calm, but in his eyes was a fracture no amount of hot tea could mask. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe he had frozen his heart for too long. But with Emma, he felt it thawing. "I don't think that's true," Lydia said softly, with both certainty and challenge. "I've seen the way you look at Emma. A little brown girl, different. And you still saw her as someone worthy of love. Not everyone sees her that way, especially in your world." Nathan looked up, eyes darkening slightly as if he'd been truly seen for the first time. He hadn't expected a reminder of race, something he'd trained himself to ignore in boardrooms full of pale faces. "Emma sees the good in everyone," Lydia continued, "even those who look at her with suspicion just because of her skin. She sees the good in you, and in me, a single black mother. The type this world has long written off as a burden. Sometimes I think Emma's too much of a dreamer, Lydia sighed. But if she can dream of a world where someone like me is respected, then maybe that's a dream more real than this reality. Lydia set her cup down, turning to face him directly. Nathan, she said, if you look at me, not as a resume or some unfortunate case, but as a person, what do you see? He nodded, clearly not used to being challenged by someone the world never handed a microphone to. I see someone who put a black child above million-dollar contracts. I see someone who's willing to shatter the myth that power must come with apathy. And I see you, not just as a CEO, but as a man who still has a heart. Nathan's jaw tightened. You don't know anything about me, he said, though his voice trembled like he wasn't sure he believed that anymore. I know you remember the janitor's name, the one no white CEO in this building has ever acknowledged, Lydia said, emotion in her voice. That's not habit, that's character. That's the easiest excuse when someone doesn't want to be seen as having a heart, she added. Victoria saw the shell, Lydia whispered. But I see the fear. You're not cold. You're just too used to being left. You're scared to be hurt, scared to love someone and then be abandoned, as if your worth disappears with them. Nathan stood, his shadow stretching under the golden light through the glass. Maybe I have reason to be afraid. I've lost too much, and every loss leaves a scar, deeper than skin. Lydia stepped closer, her breath nearly brushing his neck. We're all afraid, she whispered. I'm afraid Emma will always see her mother as someone the world rejected. I'm not strong, Lydia said. I just didn't have another choice. I kept fighting because if I didn't, my daughter, a brown-skinned little girl, would have none. That's not weakness, Lydia, Nathan said, eyes filled with something close to reverence. That's the kind of strength I've rarely seen, especially in a black woman fighting the world alone. They stood there in silence. Between them, something unspeakable stirred, a connection beyond race, status, or shattered pasts. Lydia thought he might step toward her, break the line, but instead he stepped back, as if reminded that loving someone like her might shake his entire world. I should check on Emma, Nathan said, voice soft but broken, like he was running from the very thing he wanted. When they got to the room, Emma was awake, glowing like light after a storm. Her eyes lit up seeing them together. I feel better, Emma said. Mr. Nathan's house isn't like our old place. Here, no one yells at me that black kids just disturb the peace. Nathan paused briefly, then sat on the edge of the bed. I'm glad to hear that, Emma. You want something to eat? I can make some soup. It's a family recipe. You can cook? Emma's eyes sparkled like he just said he had magic. A little. Learn from my dad. He said the secret is to cook with love. Nathan grew thoughtful, eyes sinking into memory. Then I better pour in a whole lot of love, because you deserve to be taken care of like that. When Nathan stepped away, Emma tugged Lydia's sleeve. Mom, she whispered, I think Mr. Nathan likes you, even though you're not the kind of woman rich white men usually show off. And you like him too. You smiled, like you forgot this world once made you believe you weren't worth loving. Lydia blushed, hiding a small smile. It's not that easy, baby. Life isn't a fairy tale. Why not? Emma asked. Dad used to say, you don't need a reason or papers to love someone. You just need a big enough heart and the courage not to fear rejection. Lydia looked into her daughter's young but deeply knowing eyes. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe she, more than the world, was the one who had built up walls after being judged for her skin, her story. That night, the three of them sat around an old wooden table, soft light glowing over steaming bowls of soup. It wasn't a fancy meal, but it was the warmest dinner Lydia had had in years of fear and scarcity. Nathan looked at Emma like she was the most precious thing in the world. Not a poor black kid, as so many had labeled her, but a child worthy of unconditional love. When Emma talked about being teased for frizzy hair and dark skin, Nathan didn't interrupt. He didn't pity her. He just listened, as if every word she spoke was sacred scripture. When Emma asked what he did for a living, he didn't use fancy words, just said he built things that helped the world run better. and hoped one day she'd do something even greater. "Mr. Nathan," Emma asked while he was washing dishes, "do you ever feel sad living alone in a big house, with no one saying goodnight like they really mean it?" Nathan paused, the plate floating in the sink like all the thoughts he'd tried to drown. "I think everyone should have a family, because family turns four walls into a home." Nathan smiled wistfully. "It's not that easy, Emma. Family isn't something grown-ups like me can easily find again, especially when we were taught that an ideal family doesn't look anything like what we have here." Emma giggled, shaking her head like she was teaching a grown-up a lesson. "That's silly. You can't buy family with money or status." "Mama told me," Emma went on, "we choose family with our hearts. We love someone. We keep them. We don't have to look the same. We don't have to be the same color." My dad was the only white person in our neighborhood. People said he was crazy for loving Mama, a black woman, but he still chose her, and me. Nathan looked at Lydia through the halo of Emma's curls. His gaze was no longer the cold stare of a CEO. It was the look of a man allowing himself to hope for the first time. "Did it really happen like that?" he asked, voice hoarse with emotion. "Exactly like that," Emma nodded, unusually serious. "You just have to ask, and be brave enough to hear the answer." On the ride back, Emma fell asleep, head tilted against the window, lips slightly parted. The car was filled only with the gentle sound of her breathing and a comfortable silence. "Thank you for today," Lydia said softly. Emma was right. Your house made her feel like she wasn't being watched with pity or suspicion. "She's always welcome," Nathan replied, glancing at her with a faint smile. "Both of you, not just out of politeness." "I know this isn't simple," Nathan whispered, eyes on the road. "We work together. You're trying to unlearn someone, and me, I've never learned how to keep anyone." He took a deep breath. "But Emma is right. That house, it's no longer a home, just a big, beautiful shell, empty." Lydia's heart pounded. "What are you saying, Nathan?" "I think," he said, "it's time I stop being afraid. Maybe I need someone unlike me, someone strong enough to build a family, even when the world says we don't belong together." When they reached Lydia's building, Nathan stopped the car and turned to her. "Tomorrow, would you have dinner with me? Just us. No schedules, no roles." Lydia looked at her daughter, her symbol of hope, then at Nathan, a white man carrying both fear and a yearning to cross invisible lines. "Yes," she replied, eyes glistening. "I would really like that." Nathan's smile this time held no defense, no strategy, just truth. And Lydia realized maybe her daughter had seen something she herself hadn't dared to believe. Maybe love didn't need to be perfect, didn't need a plan, just two people brave enough to stop caring about the past, about color, about what the world says. The restaurant Nathan picked wasn't flashy, but warm enough for two souls once shattered to feel safe. The soft light reflected off Lydia's warm brown skin like a quiet affirmation. She belonged here. Lydia wore a borrowed black dress from a widowed neighbor. For the first time in months, she felt beautiful, not because of the clothes, but because of the man across from her. Nathan wore a dark suit. His deep blue eyes held focus, not on their differences, but on how Lydia was becoming part of something he longed for. "You look beautiful," he said so genuinely that Lydia blushed. Amid the soft lights and quiet jazz, they began to rewrite the definition of family, their way. "Thank you," Lydia said, though an unshaped worry stirred inside her. This relationship had already crossed the line of professionalism. It touched the most fragile parts of two people marked by hurt and divided by race and expectation. They ordered food and tried to fill the space with work talk, but each of Nathan's smiles seemed slightly off, as if hiding an old scar beneath. Lydia noticed it, the slight shrugs, the pauses between his words, all signs that he was wrestling with a truth too difficult to share. "Nathan," she gently interrupted, "you act like there's a storm in your head. What is it?" He looked out the window, the city light reflecting on his darkened skin, stirring memories he had never shared with anyone. "There are things about me," he said, voice raspy, "that if you knew, you might take it all back." "What is it?" Lydia asked, though she already sensed whatever came next would not be easy. Nathan inhaled, as if just speaking would tear open the armor he'd spent a lifetime building. You remember when I said Victoria thought I didn't know how to love, right? She wasn't wrong, but you don't know why she believed that. You don't have to tell me, Lydia said, though her eyes pleaded for the opposite. If this, between us, is real, then you deserve to know who I really am. All of it. Lydia said nothing, only listened with a heart racing. I wasn't born in a suit, he began. My mother was an addict. I was a black kid bounced around the foster system. No father, no roots. Each year a new home, each home a new set of rules, and most of them never wanted to keep a black boy. Lydia's heart tightened. She pictured a scrawny black child struggling to prove he was good enough, obedient enough not to be discarded again. Exactly, he said, eyes still on the city. And I learned, caring only gets you hurt. Every time I thought someone loved me, it ended with me leaving. And the people I loved, they always disappeared. Like my heart was just a waiting room, never a home. You taught yourself not to need anyone, Lydia whispered. I built walls, tall, thick, no windows, no exits, and I lived inside them, alone. I buried myself in books, in work, in startups. Success became the best armor. People stopped asking about where I came from when my name went up on the building. I used to think, if I had money, I'd never need anyone. No love, no family, just me and my company. But then Nathan met Victoria. He nodded slowly. She was fair-skinned, elegant, and belonged to a world he once believed he had to step into to be seen as good enough. For a time, he tried to convince himself that he loved her, or rather that he loved how she made him appear, as if he fit into a society that still believed a man of color had to work twice as hard to be worthy. But when Victoria began talking about marriage, about white blonde children, Nathan felt suffocated. He couldn't see himself in that picture. Not then, not ever. He was terrified because he had never had a model to follow. How could a black orphan child, bounced from home to home, believe he was worthy of being a husband or a father? I was never taught how to love without hiding my skin, my memories, or my pain, he thought. He feared that if Victoria ever saw his true self, all the imperfect parts, every scar, she would turn away, just as his foster families had. So you ended it first. Better to leave than be left again, Lydia said softly, understanding the fear all too well. Nathan nodded bitterly. I became exactly what she feared most. Cold, emotionless, a suit-wearing shadow that knew how to make money. I told myself it was merciful, that it would hurt less, but really it was just another way to run. Lydia reached out, unafraid, even knowing the walls behind his eyes were high and thick. You're not cruel, Nathan. You're just scared, and I understand that. Victoria wasn't wrong. You were cold. You built walls around yourself. You've lived in survival mode so long, you forgot people can actually live, not just exist. Lydia shook her head. Number. That's not the man I see when you're caring for my daughter. Yes, you have walls, but you let Emma through, and you've let me see you. That says everything. Emma is just a child, but she feels things. Children don't care about skin color or past. They see hearts, and Emma saw yours. If Emma, a black girl who's been mocked for her curls, can trust your kindness, then you are not a bad man. But what if I'm not good enough? He asked, his voice cracking with fear. But what if you are, Lydia replied, and you miss it just because you're afraid? They held hands in silence. 2 hands, 2 skin tones, 2 wounds, woven into something new. Finally, Nathan continued, his voice barely a breeze. There's one more reason you should know why I offered you that job. Lydia's heart clenched. What do you mean? The day Emma came into my office, standing there, that tiny black girl, begging me to marry her mom, I broke. She gave up her pride just to give her mother a chance at love. I had never seen anyone protect someone they loved with eyes like that. I used to think no one would ever do that for me. At first, I offered you the job because of Emma, to help her. But then I realized Emma was right about something else. That you, a strong, kind black mother, also deserve someone to stand beside you. Nathan looked at Lydia, and for the first time, He didn't see a single black mother society had once looked down on. He saw a warrior, a mother who had been knocked down by the world but still stood for her brown-skinned daughter. You fought when no one helped, when people whispered behind your back, called you a social burden, but you didn't stop. You never begged for pity. You just needed a chance, and you took it. In that moment, Nathan said, you started caring for me, for Emma, without even realizing it. He admitted, I used to think I only existed to sign deals, to count balances. But then you and Emma walked in, and I started remembering what it felt like to have a human heart. You both gave me something I never knew I was missing. Meaning, Lydia asked softly. And what does that mean, Nathan? A purpose, he said. Before I met you and Emma, I was just surviving. A black man in a world that claps for him when he's successful, but never truly wants him there. Watching how you protect Emma, how you love each other without anyone backing you, made me want to be part of that world, a real world. Lydia's eyes welled. She had heard many empty phrases in her life, but none like this. Nathan, she began, I know this isn't fair. I know you're still hurting from James, and I have no right to ask anything of you. But I can't keep pretending this is just work, or kindness, or some humanitarian act. Nathan looked into her deep brown eyes. I love you, Lydia. And I love your daughter too. The confession hung between them, raw, unpolished, and tightening Lydia's chest. She looked at Nathan, not as the successful businessman in a $5,000 suit, but as a black boy who had learned to hide his tears to survive. I'm scared too, Lydia admitted. I'm scared because I thought I'd never love again. Not after losing James. I'm scared because Emma already loves you. And if this doesn't work, she'll be hurt. And I don't know if I could forgive myself. You're right. I'm still grieving, still lost, and I'm not sure I'm ready to love again. Nathan's face darkened, but Lydia didn't stop. But I'm also scared of losing this, the one thing that's made me feel alive again. And I'm falling for you too, Nathan. Nathan's eyes widened, stunned as if hearing for the first time that he was worthy of love. I love you, and I can't help it. How could I not love the man who sees my daughter as a miracle? You brought us home. When Emma had a fever, you didn't panic. You cared for her like she was your own flesh and blood. You listened when she talked about skin color, about the kids who teased her at school, not with dismissal or jokes. You made her feel seen. You made her feel safe, loved, the kind of love no black child should have to fight for. And you made me feel hopeful, like I'm not just a widowed black woman struggling for her child. Nathan asked, what things? Hope, joy, and a quiet belief that maybe, just maybe, there are still good things in life for people like us. For the first time in years, Lydia felt that maybe she and Emma wouldn't always be left out, pushed to the margins just because of their skin color. Maybe this time, they didn't have to fight the world alone anymore. Nathan took Lydia's hand, tanned from labor and sacrifice, then bent down and kissed her knuckle as if it were the most precious thing he had ever touched. Don't say you're alone, he whispered, because from now on, no matter what happens, I swear, you and Emma will never have to live in the dark by yourselves again. Lydia looked at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. What are you saying, Nathan? I want to try, Lydia, to see if someone once seen as worthless and a widowed black woman can build something beautiful together. A boy who grew up in the foster system that didn't care whether he lived or died, and a woman the world mocked for her skin and poverty. Can we create something for Emma, something we never had? Emma believes in us, more than anyone. Maybe she's right. Maybe we are the family she's always dreamed of. Lydia looked into Nathan's eyes, not the gaze of a cold businessman anymore, but the eyes of a man who was scared, but brave because of love. She thought of Emma, the little brown girl fast asleep, dreaming of a day she wouldn't have to bow her head before mocking words about her mother's skin or status. She remembered James, who once said, "Love is a gamble, but a gamble worth taking." Lydia whispered, "Okay, let's be brave the way Emma believes, and try." Nathan's smile broke wide, like the first light after years of emotional darkness. Really? You mean it? He nearly whispered, disbelieving. But there's one condition, he said. Lydia nodded gently. Go on. We take this slowly, and Emma, she's always the top priority. If at any point this hurts her, we stop. No hesitation. Lydia held his hand. Agreed. Anything else, Nathan? You have to promise, when things get hard, when the world looks at us like we don't belong, you won't run. Because there will be days when people whisper about us. Because you're a single black woman, and I, a foster kid once seen as trash. We both carry wounds. But you have to stay. Lydia replied softly but firmly. I promise. Nathan squeezed her hand, eyes serious. No running. Come rain or shine, we face it together. On the way home, Lydia walked beside Nathan, and inside her rose a feeling she thought she'd never feel again. Hope. Maybe Emma had seen what adults so often overlooked. That love didn't need to be perfect, just true. Maybe the best things came when we were humble enough to say, I can't do this alone. Nathan, she said as he opened the car door, her voice choked. Thank you for being brave enough to open your heart, and thank you for staying when things got real. As the car passed quiet streets, Lydia knew, for the first time in so many years, that she was no longer lost. She was in the right place, beside the right person. 2 months later, Lydia realized loving Nathan Cross was a journey. Slow, patient, but heartbreakingly beautiful. Each day brought another detail that softened her heart. The way he hummed while working, like he was whispering to himself. And always, always saving the last bite of cake for Emma, like a sacred ritual. Or how he gently touched Lydia's hand in a crowd, when no one was watching, a silent promise. And of course, Emma beamed with happiness, because in her eyes, a miracle had come true. Her mom was smiling again. Emma, the stubborn 8-year-old with light brown skin, had appointed herself the honorary love advisor in the relationship between her mom and Nathan. No one voted, but no one dared to object as she scheduled picnics and meddled like a seasoned dating expert. Uncle Nathan, Emma said seriously as she poured syrup over pancakes in the sunlit kitchen, you should hold my mom's hand more often, and I don't know if I could forgive myself. You're right, I'm still grieving, still lost, and I'm not sure I'm ready to love again. Nathan's face darkened, but Lydia didn't stop. But I'm also scared of losing this, the one thing that's made me feel alive again. And I'm falling for you too, Nathan. Nathan's eyes widened, stunned as if hearing for the first time that he was worthy of love. I love you, and I can't help it. How could I not love the man who sees my daughter as a miracle? You brought us home. When Emma had a fever, you didn't panic. You cared for her like she was your own flesh and blood. You listened when she talked about skin color, about the kids who teased her at school, not with dismissal or jokes. You made her feel seen. You made her feel safe, loved, the kind of love no black child should have to fight for. And you made me feel hopeful, like I'm not just a widowed black woman struggling for her child. Nathan asked, what things? Hope, joy, and a quiet belief that maybe, just maybe, there are still good things in life for people like us. For the first time in years, Lydia felt that maybe she and Emma wouldn't always be left out, pushed to the margins just because of their skin color. Maybe this time, they didn't have to fight the world alone anymore. Nathan took Lydia's hand, tanned from labor and sacrifice, then bent down and kissed her knuckle as if it were the most precious thing he had ever touched. Don't say you're alone, he whispered, because from now on, no matter what happens, I swear, you and Emma will never have to live in the dark by yourselves again. Lydia looked at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. What are you saying, Nathan? I want to try, Lydia, to see if someone once seen as worthless and a widowed black woman can build something beautiful together. A boy who grew up in the foster system that didn't care whether he lived or died, and a woman the world mocked for her skin and poverty. Can we create something for Emma, something we never had? Emma believes in us, more than anyone. Maybe she's right. Maybe we are the family she's always dreamed of. Lydia looked into Nathan's eyes, not the gaze of a cold businessman anymore, but the eyes of a man who was scared, but brave because of love. She thought of Emma, the little brown girl fast asleep, dreaming of a day she wouldn't have to bow her head before mocking words about her mother's skin or status. She remembered James, who once said, "Love is a gamble, but a gamble worth taking." Lydia whispered, "Okay, let's be brave the way Emma believes, and try." Nathan's smile broke wide, like the first light after years of emotional darkness. "Really? You mean it?" He nearly whispered, disbelieving. "But there's one condition," he said. Lydia nodded gently. "Go on. We take this slowly, and Emma, she's always the top priority. If at any point this hurts her, we stop. No hesitation." Lydia held his hand. "Agreed. Anything else, Nathan?" "You have to promise, when things get hard, when the world looks at us like we don't belong, you won't run. Because there will be days when people whisper about us. Because you're a single black woman, and I, a foster kid once seen as trash. We both carry wounds. But you have to stay." Lydia replied softly but firmly, "I promise." Nathan squeezed her hand, eyes serious. "No running. Come rain or shine, we face it together." On the way home, Lydia walked beside Nathan, and inside her rose a feeling she thought she'd never feel again. Hope. Maybe Emma had seen what adults so often overlooked. That love didn't need to be perfect, just true. Maybe the best things came when we were humble enough to say, "I can't do this alone." "Nathan," she said as he opened the car door, her voice choked. "Thank you for being brave enough to open your heart, and thank you for staying when things got real." As the car passed quiet streets, Lydia knew, for the first time in so many years, that she was no longer lost. She was in the right place, beside the right person. 2 months later, Lydia realized loving Nathan Cross was a journey. Slow, patient, but heartbreakingly beautiful. Each day brought another detail that softened her heart. The way he hummed while working, like he was whispering to himself. And always, always saving the last bite of cake for Emma, like a sacred ritual. Or how he gently touched Lydia's hand in a crowd, when no one was watching, a silent promise. And of course, Emma beamed with happiness, because in her eyes, a miracle had come true. Her mom was smiling again. Emma, the stubborn 8-year-old with light brown skin, had appointed herself the honorary love advisor in the relationship between her mom and Nathan. No one voted, but no one dared to object as she scheduled picnics and meddled like a seasoned dating expert. "Uncle Nathan," Emma said seriously as she poured syrup over pancakes in the sunlit kitchen, "you should hold my mom's hand more often. Black women like her have had to be strong for too long. They need to feel loved." Nathan choked on surprise. "Really?" he asked, trying to hide a smile. "Of course," Emma said as if it were obvious. "And it doesn't have to be fancy. Just nice flowers. Beautiful ones. Enough to make someone feel they're not forgotten. The way people always ignore my mom because she's not white." "Emma," Lydia blushed, gently scolding. "Uncle Nathan doesn't need dating advice from an 8-year-old. Actually," Nathan smiled softly, his eyes warm, "I think Emma understands love better than most adults who've hurt me ever did." Emma beamed proudly. "I learned from movies. Good men always bring flowers, say nice things, and make women, especially women like my mom, smile more than cry." Nathan stood up, smiling lopsidedly. "Then I guess I'd better go buy some flowers." An hour later, Nathan returned with a bouquet of fresh sunflowers, bright as Emma's smile, a vivid reminder that black women too deserve to be celebrated. Emma squealed like she just won the lottery, but the look Nathan gave Lydia, that look that seemed to cut through every wound, every scar left by society, made her throat tighten. "I picked these flowers because they remind me of you," Nathan said softly, radiant, effortlessly so. "And no one can extinguish that light, not even when the world tries." It was the moment Lydia feared most, when a sweet word made her forget the reality that loving a white man in a world full of prejudice was a gamble. Her heart had gone farther than her reason could control. And that, for a black woman who had lost everything once, was terrifying. That night, with Emma fast asleep, Lydia and Nathan sat on the old swing in the back porch, under a sky full of stars as if they were witnessing a new chapter begin. The scent of jasmine in the warm air softened everything, as if any wound could heal here. "Can I ask you something real?" Lydia whispered, resting her head on Nathan's shoulder. "Always. What's on your mind? Have you ever felt guilty for being happy?" Nathan was silent for a while. "What do you mean?" "I mean, James has only been gone less than a year. I feel like I'm betraying him. When I start smiling again and loving someone else." Nathan held her tighter. "Do you think James wanted you to stay lonely forever?" "No," Lydia sighed. "He wanted me to be happy. He wanted Emma to have someone to call Dad. But just because I know that's right doesn't mean I don't feel guilty." Nathan lowered his head. "I get it. I feel guilty too, because me and Emma are what's making you feel alive again. It's a beautiful guilt, but it's guilt all the same." Nathan had lived his whole life believing that a white man like him could never truly be loved by a woman of color without suspicion, that he wasn't worthy of love, at least not the way society had whispered into his ear. And now, having Lydia and Emma, sometimes it was the happiness itself that scared him. Lydia, who had heard enough racial slurs and gender-based judgment, looked deep into his eyes. "That won't make me run. I'm not the type to be scared off by love." "But how do you know for sure?" he asked, filled with doubt. Partly fear, partly because he'd never been allowed to believe. "Because every morning I wake up, I choose to stay. Not because I need to, but because I want to. Love is a decision, not just a feeling, and I've decided that I deserve this, regardless of skin, past, or fear." Beneath the quiet stars, Nathan leaned in and kissed Lydia. A kiss like a request, a confirmation, a silent vow. Lydia felt a rare sense of peace, the kind a black woman seldom gets to feel when loving a white man in a world full of judgment. "I love you," Nathan whispered against her lips. Not like a confession, but as an acknowledgement that he wasn't running anymore. "I love you too," Lydia replied softly, as if she had finally come home. The weeks that followed passed in a sweet haze. Nathan, the man once seen as the symbol of the cold white elite, now patiently tutored Emma in math, cooked brown rice and omelets for the two of them, as if that was all that truly mattered. Lydia left traces of herself in Nathan's apartment: a toothbrush, a faded cotton nightgown, a book marked halfway. Small things, but unmistakable, like fingerprints of someone who had survived prejudice. They weren't just in love, they were building. A life together not built on privilege, but on understanding and the daily choice to try again. Emma, the little girl who had once withdrawn after her father's death, now laughed more, studied better, and made friends without fear of being asked, "Where's your dad?" The future no longer scared Emma. It was a story with a new chapter, and she was writing it in colored ink. One evening, Emma looked up while coloring. "When you marry Uncle Nathan, can I be the flower girl?" Lydia, washing dishes, nearly dropped a plate. "Emma, no one said anything about getting married." "You're going to," Emma said as if it were fact. "I've seen the way you and Uncle Nathan look at each other, like how Dad used to look at you before he passed." That night, when the apartment had gone quiet, Lydia lay awake, replaying Emma's words over and over. She and Nathan had never talked about a wedding. No rings, no plans. Just two broken people walking slowly toward each other. They lived like those who'd lost everything, holding every moment as if it could vanish. But that night, for the first time, Lydia let herself dream of a wedding. Emma tossing petals in a white dress, and herself no longer standing on the outside of every happy ending. That image, one that should have scared her, instead filled her with warmth. Like maybe, just maybe, she too deserved a beautiful ending. The next morning, dressed sharply in a suit, Nathan kept glancing at his watch, checking his phone. Not like a man busy with work, but like someone waiting for a miracle. At lunch break at the office, Lydia frowned at Nathan's unusual expression. "Is something wrong? You don't look okay." Nathan looked at her, his eyes suddenly serious, a rare sight for someone so gentle. I got a call this morning from a lawyer. As a former lawyer herself who had handled countless lawsuits, Lydia's nerves instantly went on edge. What kind of lawyer? The kind who handles bad debt, Nathan replied, his voice dropping. It's James's medical bills, he continued. They're trying to garnish your wages. They say you still owe nearly 50 grand. The peace Lydia had only recently reclaimed after years of darkness crumbled instantly, like a sandcastle washed away by waves. She thought it was all behind her. The grief, the bills, even the subtle racism when the hospital staff had once said, "Given your insurance situation, ma'am, you should prepare yourself." "How much?" Lydia whispered, though deep down she hoped Nathan wouldn't say it out loud. "47,000, Nathan said, "not including interest." Lydia felt her chest tighten. $47,000 to her might as well have been millions. That can't be. She shook her head, her hands trembling. I paid everything I had. The hospital says the emergency procedures weren't covered by insurance, Nathan explained. Looks like they've been sending letters to your old address. Lydia buried her face in her hands. The exhaustion, shame, and helplessness hit her all at once. For a single black woman like her, with no family backing or inheritance fund, that amount of money felt like a bottomless pit. Even though her new job brought some stability, she still couldn't possibly manage it. "What am I supposed to do?" Lydia sobbed. "I've tried so hard." "We'll handle it," Nathan replied, his voice like steel. "I won't let you fight this alone." "No, Nathan, don't," Lydia whispered. "You shouldn't take on my debt." "It's not that I can. I will," he said. "This debt, I'll pay it. Not because I'm rich, but because you shouldn't have to bear it alone anymore." Lydia looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. No one had ever said that to her. No one had ever done that for her. "You can't sacrifice like that for me. It's too much." "It's not about the money. It's because I believe this is worth protecting. You, Emma, everything." Nathan held her hand tighter. "This is family, not the kind that just posts morals online. This is us. 3 people torn by life, but still choosing one another." "You don't have to do this," Lydia said softly. "This debt is like a noose around your neck. It's keeping you from breathing," she cried out. "I won't let it destroy what we're building, no matter how much this society wants to see that happen." Her tears came again. "Why? Why are you doing this, Nathan?" Nathan spoke gently. "Because I love you. Because Emma deserves a home where skin color doesn't dictate instability. Because both of you, you and Emma, gave me something I never believed I deserved," Nathan said. "I used to think money was for buying admiration, power, but now I want to use it to protect what truly matters." "You don't need to thank me," Lydia whispered. "Just let me love you and Emma, and be the man she sees in you. Kind, strong, and never the one who leaves." When Nathan pulled her into a tight embrace, her tears flowed again. Not from weakness, but from the feeling of finally having someone who didn't see her as just another black single mom taking advantage of kindness. For the first time, Lydia felt real love. Love she realized wasn't just flowers and candlelight. It was the dark moments when he stayed, even when the world outside still didn't think she was white enough to be worth caring for. True love was sharing fear, choosing one another even when the outside world called their family a mess because of skin color and history. "I love you," Lydia whispered. Nathan placed a soft kiss on her forehead, light as a petal. "I love you too. Always, Lydia." But deep inside, Lydia still felt uneasy. There was something in Nathan's eyes, something off. He was so kind. It felt unreal. She'd heard these words before, from well-meaning white men, right up until they started asking for favors in return. In Lydia's world, men didn't spend $47,000 on a black woman unless they expected something more than love. So what did Nathan really want? And what would happen if one day he woke up, looked at her and Emma, and thought, not worth it? Tuesday morning, while Lydia was adjusting Nathan's meeting schedule, his personal phone rang. He looked at the screen, and his whole body tensed like a stretched wire. "I have to take this," Nathan said sharply, his tone suddenly curt, eyes sharp like a blade. "It's important." Lydia nodded, but her heart thudded. His voice, cold, distant, was no longer the man who had once held her in the dark. The man who once gently told her that her skin didn't make her any less worthy was gone. In his place was a calculating, aloof face she'd seen back when he wore a Rolex and refused to shake hands with black junior staff. "I don't care about the price. Just handle it. Now!" Lydia heard Nathan growl through the crack in the door. When the call ended, Nathan looked like he'd just been shoved onto a battlefield. Jaw clenched, eyes darkened. "Everything okay?" Lydia asked, though she already knew the answer. "It's fine," Nathan replied shortly, as if she was interrupting a man too busy for women's business. "It's just work. The kind of thing I don't want women involved in," he added dismissively. In the days that followed, Nathan became someone else. He worked late constantly, canceled plans, and when he came home, he only nodded or said, "Yeah." Lydia began to wonder, had the warmth between them been just a mirage? Emma brought her math notebook over, and Nathan didn't even look up. "Busy, ask your mom." Lydia tried to reason with herself, to make excuses for his change. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was pressure. Maybe it was her? She knew Nathan's company was preparing for a major deal, and in those kinds of power plays, women like her were often the first thing pushed out of their minds. A week passed without a single explanation, without a single tender gesture like before, and Lydia began to feel the cold seep into every corner of the house. Nathan's silence was like a boulder on her chest. Friday night, Lydia went to Nathan's apartment unannounced, and the sight before her looked like something out of a crime drama. Nathan surrounded by piles of legal documents, eyes sunken, dark circles making him look like a man running from himself. "Nathan, what are you hiding from me?" Lydia asked, her voice trembling as she shut the door behind her, as if trying to block out the entire world so the two of them could finally face the truth. "You're not just pulling away from me. You've shut Emma out too. She keeps asking me, 'Did Uncle Nathan get tired of me because I don't look like the pretty white kids on TV?'" Lydia choked. Nathan looked up, and Lydia froze. In the eyes that once made her feel safe was now something unmistakable, primal fear. "It's serious," Nathan whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it more real. "What is it?" "I have the right to know." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture whenever he lost control of the situation. And Lydia knew this time, it wasn't about work. "Do you remember I told you I grew up in foster care?" he asked, his voice lowering. "Of course," Lydia nodded, anxiety tightening in her chest as she waited. "I never told you that my birth mother didn't just abandon me because of drugs. She was in debt to people who are very, very dangerous." Lydia felt a chill crawl down her spine. Hearing the word dangerous from a man like Nathan thickened the air around them. "How dangerous? You mean mafia? The kind who never forget, never forgive. They've been hunting her for over 20 years like bloodhounds on a scent." "But what does that have to do with you? You were just a kid." Nathan let out a hollow laugh. "Blood is blood, Lydia. They don't care who I am. All they see is her son. They never found her, so they decided the son should pay." "You mean they found you?" "That call on Tuesday, it was from the head of security. Someone asked for my personal schedule, my home address, even about you and Emma." Lydia collapsed into a chair, hands trembling. Cold sweat soaked through her shirt. "Are you in danger?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I'm used to it," Nathan said, trying to stay composed. "That's why I always kept my distance. You can't hurt people you don't love, right?" But then his voice cracked, like it might shatter. "Now I love, and I have to protect you and Emma." "What are you saying, Nathan?" Lydia whispered. Nathan stood abruptly, walking to the window like he couldn't bear her gaze. "I was wrong, Lydia. I never should have come into your life. Never should have let myself dream that someone like me, a mixed-race orphan from foster homes with ghosts trailing behind, could love and live a normal life with a black woman this world refuses to treat with dignity." "Nathan, don't say that!" Lydia cried, tears spilling, her heart splitting open. She tried to steady her voice. "We can get through this, together, as a family." "There's no together," Nathan snapped, spinning around, eyes blazing like he was wrestling demons. "You don't understand. These people, they don't threaten. They act. They could hurt you. And Emma, a little black girl like her, isn't a high-value target, but she's an easy one. Lydia trembled, tears dripping freely. Are you saying this is a breakup? Just to run away? I want you both to live in peace, and the only way is without me. Lydia shook her head, her voice breaking. You don't get to decide that. I do get to, because if you can't see the threat, I can. I won't let the darkness swallow you and that child, just because I dared to dream of something I never deserved. So you pick the only thing you know, running, pushing people away, just like you always have. Abandoning us like the love I gave you was worthless. Nathan froze, as if she'd slapped him. I'm protecting you. Number, you're just justifying your cowardice, Lydia snapped, tears falling but voice steady with fury. You always do this, Nathan. Every time things get complicated, you build walls. You push people out. No weapons needed, just your cold silence. This is no different, just like with Victoria, just like when you ran from the ones who cared, because you couldn't believe someone with your dirty blood could be truly loved. Nathan's face hardened into stone. This conversation is over. I'll make sure your job isn't affected, but from now on, report to someone else. Keep personal feelings out of the office. You're firing me, Lydia growled. I'm protecting you and your daughter, Nathan said, face like ice. Lydia stood up sharply. Don't use her name to mask your fear, Nathan. That little girl believes you're her father. A black child doesn't have many role models to believe in, and she chose you. I can't be her father, Lydia. Not because I don't want to, but because you were afraid to trust someone like me. With bad blood, brown skin, and a dirty past. And now, you have your excuse to let go. Because you fear real love. You'd rather be alone than fight for something right, something that would hurt too much to lose. Nathan turned his back to her, rigid as stone. Go, don't make this harder. Lydia turned away, her voice cracking. Fine. But when Emma asks why Uncle Nathan doesn't want to see her anymore, I'll tell her the truth, Nathan whispered behind her. I'll tell her it was you who chose cowardice over love. Lydia walked away, each step tearing her chest open. But she didn't stop, not when her heart was bleeding for a man who once meant the world. Lydia couldn't make sense of it, how everything could fall apart so fast. Yesterday they were a family. Today they were broken. The man who had promised never to leave was the first to disappear when darkness came. He said he loved her, but what kind of love retreats at the first threat? When Lydia got home, Emma was still sitting at the kitchen table, homework scattered around, a pencil clutched between her small fingers. Where's Uncle Nathan? Emma asked, her wide eyes fixed on the door, as if willing it to open any second. Lydia knelt down, her heart tightening in her chest. How do you tell your daughter that the first man who ever made her feel truly loved just turned his back and walked away? My love, Uncle Nathan isn't coming back. Emma's fingers froze, the pencil slipping from her hand and falling to the table. Why not? He's dealing with some trouble, and he thinks it's best to stay away from us. But family's supposed to help each other, Emma whispered. We don't leave the ones we love when they're in trouble. Lydia pulled her daughter into a hug, her tears spilling. I know, baby. Mommy knows. Does he still love us? Lydia froze. That question was like a dagger to the heart. He still loves us. He's just scared. Scared of what? There are bad people looking for him, and he's afraid if he stays close to us, they'll hurt us. Emma sat still. Her eyes carried a maturity far beyond her 8 years, the same girl who had once watched her father walk away without a word. So, he left to protect us? He thinks so, sweetheart. Emma bit her lip, tears rolling down her cheeks. That's so stupid. Family faces fear together. Kids like me, kids with skin like mine. We know what fear is, Mama, but no one's allowed to run. Lydia held her tighter, her sobs silent. I know, baby, I know. Then, will you go find him? I don't know what to do. He won't listen to me anymore. Emma pulled back, her dark eyes shining with fierce defiance. Then we have to make him listen. We have to show him. Love is stronger than fear. Even for someone like me, a black kid the world thinks isn't worth protecting. Looking into those brave eyes, Lydia realized her daughter was no longer just a child waiting to be loved. Emma was right. Nathan was worth fighting for. This family, flawed and fragile, was worth saving. But how do you rescue a man who thinks the only way to save you is to destroy everything good he ever had? 3 days passed in a fog of grief and longing. Lydia didn't eat, didn't sleep, and kept calling Nathan's office. Over and over, as if the moment she stopped, hope would vanish. She called again. Another long ring, then silence. Nathan still refused to answer. Lydia stood outside Nathan's home, knocking until her knuckles hurt, but inside was only cold silence, like she had never existed. She called his assistant, a woman who spoke softly but with the chill of corporate detachment. All she got was, "I'm sorry, Mr. Cross is not accepting any personal appointments at this time." Polite, but a slammed door nonetheless. At home, Emma shrank into a shadow. The light in her eyes was gone. She did her homework without being told, ate without protest, but never once mentioned the house with the blue door she used to dream of living in with Nathan. To Lydia, it felt like reliving a nightmare. Like when James died and Emma didn't speak for 3 months. That little girl had returned, silent and deeply wounded. On Thursday night, as Lydia tucked her in, Emma whispered in a voice so faint it was as if she feared even sadness needed permission. "Mama, do people like us, people like you and me, ever get to be okay?" The question hit Lydia like a punch to the chest. No 8-year-old should ask that, unless the world had already taught her that her skin color was a reason for pain. "We'll be okay, baby, even without Uncle Nathan." But even as she said it, Lydia didn't believe it. We were okay when it was just the two of us. And we still will be. People might laugh at our dreams because of our skin, but they can't take our hearts. We have each other. That's enough. But Lydia knew her heart was lying. Nathan had once been their light, and now that light was gone. Yes, they would survive. Black people always survive. But survival doesn't mean wholeness. Nathan had given them something rare. For people like them, a feeling of belonging. And now that hole left behind was deep and cold. Emma was quiet for a long moment before she murmured, "I think Uncle Nathan won't be okay without us either." "What do you mean?" "I've seen the look in his eyes before, Mama. Like everyone always left him, because he wasn't good enough. Just like how some kids at school look at me, just because I'm not white." "My love, adults get scared too. Sometimes they do the wrong thing for the right reasons. But wrong is still wrong. If someone like you can survive everything, if I can smile even when they call me a leftover chocolate, then we can help Uncle Nathan believe in love." Lydia kissed her daughter's forehead. "Sleep now, my princess. Tomorrow morning, we'll figure out how to bring him back." But by morning, things got worse. Much worse. 6 a.m. The phone rang, slicing through the shadows like a blade. On the screen, Sarah, Mr. Cross's assistant. "Mrs. Lydia, this is Sarah, Mr. Cross's assistant. I'm calling because I think he's not okay." Lydia shot up. "What do you mean, not okay?" "He hasn't left his office in 3 days. No food, no sleep. Security staff has been dismissed. He's refusing to see anyone. Honestly, I've never seen him like this." "Why are you calling me?" Sarah hesitated. "Because before this week, I never saw him this way. He talked about you and your daughter all the time. And for the first time, he smiled. Not because of work, but because of love." "Mrs. Williams," Sarah added, voice tight with emotion. "I've worked for him for 5 years. I've never seen him truly smile until he met you. A black woman who did something this all-white executive floor never could." Lydia's heart squeezed, gripped by both longing and the knowledge that she had brought something good into Nathan's life. "I don't know what else to do. He shut me out completely." "Maybe you don't need to say anything," Sarah said gently. "Maybe you just need to show him what he's refusing to see." "What do you mean?" "Today, 2 p.m. shareholders meeting, full of power suits and polished voices. Press will be there too. If someone shows up with something important, Mr. Cross can't ignore that." Lydia sat upright, eyes suddenly ablaze. Are you telling me to crash a room full of millionaires? I'm telling you, desperation needs bold action, and you should bring Emma. Trust me, if anyone can pierce his armor, it's that little girl, a brown-skinned child with a heart that fears nothing. Lydia sat motionless on the bed after the call. Crashing a meeting full of wealthy, powerful, white people? That went against everything she was ever taught, to be humble, quiet, and never draw attention. But this time, maybe the rules needed to be broken. She remembered Emma's voice. Family faces fear together, and she realized being respectable didn't keep the people you love. Only courage could do that. It was time to stop playing the model black mom society expected her to be and start becoming a warrior for her family. That afternoon, Lydia and Emma stood in front of the 70-story glass tower, headquarters of Cross Industries, where most people of color were only seen cleaning floors. Today, they weren't here to ask permission. Emma wore a crisp white dress, her braids neatly done, holding a card with a messy but clear handwritten note. Family doesn't abandon each other. Lydia had put on the same black dress she wore on their first date. But today, it wasn't a memory. It was armor, and her chest burned with determination like a torch. Ready, my little warrior? She asked, squeezing Emma's hand. Emma nodded. I wrote this in the morning. I thought, if someone reads it and doesn't feel anything, maybe they don't have a heart. Lydia smiled, eyes brimming. It's perfect, baby. They stepped into the glass elevator. With every floor rising, Lydia's heartbeat grew louder. Floor 50, the doors opened, no turning back. Sarah waited at reception, whispering quickly. Conference room B, end of the hallway, third door on the left. They started 10 minutes ago. Press is recording. This is your one shot. Thank you, Lydia whispered. Sarah held her gaze and said firmly, no matter what he says, don't give up. He needs you, more than he knows. Lydia gripped Emma's hand tighter. The two of them walked forward like stepping onto a battlefield. Through the glass wall, Lydia saw Nathan sitting at the head of the table. Surrounding him were shareholders, all white, all in Armani suits, eyes cold as steel. Nathan looked pale, shoulders hunched like he was carrying the weight of the world. It's time, Emma, Lydia whispered. Remember? Emma nodded. She stepped up quietly and knocked 3 firm times. Every sound in the room stopped, as if sucked out by a vacuum. All eyes, the stern, shocked, disapproving, turned to the brown-skinned girl standing at the door. Nathan froze. His face turned white, as if all the armor he'd built collapsed in a second. Nathan Cross, who do you think you are? A child's voice echoed through the elegant glass room. Emma stepped in, back straight, chin lifted, like a tiny plaintiff walking into court. Emma, now's not the time, Nathan murmured, voice hoarse. But Emma wouldn't be interrupted. No, this is exactly the time, she said firmly. You've been hiding from us for 4 days. That's not how someone in a family acts. Her voice rang out amid stunned silence. The whole room, filled with tailored suits and silk ties, began to murmur. Nathan lowered his head, his shoulders trembling. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a boy caught in the act. Gentlemen, if we could just take a brief... Nathan started to rise, but didn't finish. No! Emma raised her voice. The room fell silent again. I want to speak, and everyone needs to listen. She walked forward, pulled a chair, climbed up and stood, tiny among giants. But her voice wasn't tiny at all. It rang like a verdict. Lydia choked up, her eyes wet with tears. She had never seen Emma this brave. Her daughter was doing what grown adults with money, power, and degrees often couldn't do. Speak the truth in a room not meant for them. I'm Emma Williams, she said clearly. Nathan Cross is someone I call family, but he's really dumb. A ripple of awkward laughter passed and then faded as she continued. Nathan didn't say a word. He collapsed back into his chair, covering his face, as if the words of a child were hitting a place no CEO title ever reached. You see, Emma said seriously, Mr. Nathan Cross, you think that if bad people want to hurt you, the right move is to push away everyone who loves you. But that's the dumbest thing a grown-up could believe. Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but Emma held up her hand. I'm not finished. When something scary comes, you don't abandon family. You hold on to them, because family is where you're protected. That's what my dad taught me before he died. The room fell completely silent. No more whispers, no more clicking keyboards. Men who ran billion-dollar corporations now sat as silent witnesses before a 10-year-old girl. He used to be so lonely, the kind of sadness adults never dare admit. But when Mom and I came along, he started to laugh, really laugh, and he was truly happy. And we finally had a family again. A family I thought I'd never have, Lydia cried. Not from sorrow, but because Emma had said everything she herself couldn't put into words. Nathan still didn't speak. He just stared at Emma, like a man waking up from sleepwalking. Then some bad people threatened him, and instead of letting us help, he ran away. He chose to be scared alone. But being scared alone is even scarier. So dumb, Emma concluded, voice trembling. Because when someone who loves you is beside you, fear isn't a monster anymore. Then Emma pulled a small, simply folded card from her pocket. She walked up to Nathan, the most powerful man in the room, and gently placed it in his hand. This is for you. Her voice softened, but everyone heard it clearly. It says, family doesn't abandon each other, and we won't abandon you, even if you're trying to abandon yourself. Nathan opened the card with trembling hands. There was something in the eyes of a white man long accustomed to power that now flickered when faced with love from a brown child. Inside was the neat, slanted handwriting of an 8-year-old girl. Dear Mr. Nathan, we love you, and my mom loves you too. I want you to be our family forever. Please don't be scared anymore, okay? They were innocent words, but powerful enough to shatter the ice that prejudice and power had wrapped around his heart. Love, Emma, a simple signature that made Nathan's chest tighten. A note below made the entire boardroom hold its breath. You once drew a picture with me in it, because that's where I belong. A simple stick figure drawing, a mother, a curly-haired brown girl, and a white man standing side by side, smiling, as if skin color had never been a barrier. The three of them held hands in front of a house, a symbol of something the elite white society in this room rarely wanted to acknowledge. A multiracial family, and one that wasn't ashamed. Not hidden, not a secret. Nathan sat frozen, staring at the card as if it had just slapped him. Then he looked up, eyes glistening, and met the unwavering gaze of the little girl the world would say wasn't his equal. Emma, he breathed, voice cracking. If the bad people want to get to you, they'll have to go through me and my mom first, Emma declared firmly, almost defiantly. And we don't fall that easily. She's right, Lydia stepped forward, no fear in her voice. A black woman standing tall in a room that had, for decades, only heard the voices of white men. Nathan, we don't need you to build walls thinking you're doing the noble thing. We don't need you to distance yourself just because you're afraid they'll see you with a family that doesn't look like theirs. Love isn't hiding. Love is holding hands when the world stares like you don't belong. Nathan stood up, stiff, still clutching the card like it was the only thing holding him together. You think you understand danger? Lydia said, voice trembling but firm. We've lived in danger since birth. And still, we love. And still, we live. We know you're worth the risk. And if this society can't see that, just because you love a black woman and a child who doesn't carry your name, then society is the problem, not your family. We once lived without you, and that wasn't a family, it was just survival. The more you pull away, the more you hurt us. You think you're protecting us. But what you're really saying is, we're not good enough to stand beside you. If someone hurts you, they'll have to hurt us too, Emma added, eyes unblinking. Because we're family. At least we won't be fighting alone. And sometimes, that's enough to make the enemy back down. Maybe they'll see a man with an entire army of love behind him and think twice before touching him. Nathan turned, remembering he was still in a room full of power and scrutiny, but no one looked bored anymore, like they did during the Q2 dividend talk. Now they were witnessing a plea far more moving than any strategy presentation. Perhaps A deep voice rose from the end of the table. We should listen to the little girl. Family loyalty, if it spreads into the company, now that's a real asset. Nathan turned back, eyes wide. He could hardly believe what he'd just heard in this pinnacle of power. I've been in business for half a century, son, said Mr. Patterson, a soft smile forming, and I've learned one thing. If a man can inspire loyalty from his home into his workplace, he's the kind of man I'd bet my money on. One of the oldest shareholders in the room, a white man with silver hair, spoke softly. That little brown girl just taught me the most profound lesson on trust and loyalty I've ever learned in 60 years of business. The entire room fell silent. Then murmurs of agreement rippled through the space. Those who had once sat there with subtle contempt, perhaps disbelieving a brown child dared to step into a place for adults only, now nodded, whispered, moved. Nathan stood bewildered, perhaps because he never expected a child the world once looked at with suspicion to move an entire room of power. Emma gently tugged on the sleeve of Nathan's expensive suit. Mr. Nathan, will you come home with us? Her voice wasn't pleading, it was full of trust. Nathan looked at the girl, then at Lydia, the woman whose skin once made him hesitate, and finally at the tiny card trembling in his hand. Emma, I'm scared, Nathan admitted, like a child who had just lost his way. Emma squeezed his hand. There's nothing wrong with being scared, but no one ever said we have to be scared alone. Family is about facing things together, no matter what color we are. Nathan knelt down eye level with Emma. In that moment, he no longer saw racial difference, only a child willing to love him, despite everything. Are you sure? He asked, voice heavy with pain. A white man with a messy past and enemies lurking? Do I really deserve to stand beside you and your mom? Absolutely, Emma said without hesitation. You're the best, only after my dad. And I think if he were still alive, he'd call you his friend. Nathan broke down in tears. He hugged the little girl tightly, as if trying to hold on to the first good thing he'd had in years, after being buried in fear and prejudice. I love you, Emma, he choked out. We love you too, Emma whispered, gently patting his back like a grown-up would. Now can we go home, she added. I drew a picture of our dog. You have to see it. Nathan chuckled, tears still fresh. But we don't have a dog, Emma. We will. Every proper family needs a dog, Emma replied, as if it were a universal law. As Nathan stood up, carrying the girl in his arms, his eyes found Lydia, burning with gratitude, remorse, and something deeper than love. Can you forgive me, Nathan said softly, for walking away, for letting fear, and maybe the judgment of others, pull me away from you both? There's nothing to forgive, Lydia replied, stepping closer. You came back. That's all that matters. I swear, I won't run anymore, Nathan said. Whether it's enemies or the past, we'll face it together. Together, Lydia nodded. A promise not just to each other, but to the daughter standing between them. A bridge over race and pain. Nathan kissed Lydia in full view of those who once thought they could never support a family like this. And then, the room erupted in applause, genuine and heartfelt. As the three of them walked out of the building hand in hand, Emma looked up at Nathan, her face glowing like she'd just completed the most important mission of her life. See, she said, told you, family is forever, even when people say it shouldn't be. You were right, Nathan sighed, as if shedding a lifetime of prejudice. I know, Emma shrugged. I'm smart. I even got an A in Intro to Sociology. So, ice cream now? Reunited families deserve real celebrations. Nathan laughed. Not a forced laugh, but a real one. Absolutely. Anyone who loves each other deserves ice cream. As they reached the parking lot, Nathan pulled Lydia aside. There's something I need to tell you, he said, about the people who threatened me. I've hired new security. The police are involved. No more hiding. We'll handle this, as a family. Good, Lydia replied, eyes steady. She wasn't afraid anymore, because for the first time, they were truly a family. No more hiding, no more running. Lydia placed a hand over Nathan's chest, her eyes glowing. Nathan, even if things go the worst possible way, remember what Emma said. A brown family and a white man, holding hands, we're stronger that way than letting society pull us apart. I won't forget, Nathan replied, for the first time sounding like a man who truly knew where he belonged. Not ever again. As they watched Emma skipping ahead, singing without a care in the world about what anyone thought of her brown skin, Lydia thought, sometimes the bravest person is a child who knows how to love, without conditions. It was Emma, a brown child in a world still laced with prejudice, who had pulled them back together with pure love. And now only one thing remained, to give that love its rightful name.